INA. That's a little different. We're kind of tied at the hip. I don't know. And I gotta ask you, do you get the emails to Webster Herald at?
Tim forwards a bunch of them to me. I can't say that I get all of them.
Because I don't know if I'm bugging Tim when I send him my stuff. Like, I used to send it to the editor. Is he still the editor?
Yeah.
Then I'm
You
not
just
bugging.
send it to the main email address. Should be reaching Tim.
Okay. I just didn't know. Okay, good. Fine. Is it official? Well, that's great. Love it. I could have spent 5 hours on Jenny Cash Museum and it was so interesting.
I think I spent 3.
Did you? Wasn't it wild?
It's fascinating.
Oh, my daughter's like, yeah, let's go.
No, I read every single word.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Did you see the emails?
I
I
have.
did.
Yeah.
Saw it this week.
Sad.
Very sad.
Man.
So sad.
Yep.
And I was 15 minutes in the movie before I realized that was Tom Hanks.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. My one friend, we went, didn't know if he heard him.
Right. You see Todd on twice.
I think that kid should be up for academy. He really nailed it. For all righty, 7:29 p.m. Karen, whenever you.
You can start for
Okay. And I think if we're on the screen, we are on TV, so I'd like to bring the Thursday, July 21st, 2022 Webster Town Board meeting to order. Let's see the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dolly, can you do roll call, please?
Supervisor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilman Abbott.
Here.
Councilwoman Cody. Present. Councilman Cahill.
Here.
Councilwoman Wynn. Here. County Attorney Genesi.
Present.
Okay, next up is what I always think is my favorite part of the town board meetings, the open to the mic for up to 5 minutes from our residents. I don't know if we have anybody that is signed on tonight. This is a special treat. The previous town supervisor, 26 years in Webster government, Ron Nesbitt.
Thank you.
Mr. Nesbitt?
Correction, 24.
24. I'll give you 2 extra.
2 weeks ago, this town board passed a resolution to give away $350,000 in Webster taxpayer dollars to 14 non-for-profits. Nichols received $204,734, or 58% of the total pot of free money. With the $50,000 the town gives them each year, this makes for a staggering total amount of $254,734 in Webster taxpayers alone this year. Also, Nichols has received $821,545 from the federal government in the PPP program. So that brings the grand total from taxpayers this year to $1,076,279. Yet, they are on the agenda next week to ask for an ambulance district, which could result in a significant tax to each resident. On November 18, 2021, Supervisor Flaherty promised on a Webster Town Board resolution, the Town Attorney Genesi and he would have a new amended contract with Weems by December 15, 2021. Today is July 21st, 2022, and no contract has been provided yet to the Webster community. This was after the Town Board voted to give Weems the west side of town without a new contract laying out any new metrics, parameters, or expectations from Weems. At no time did you go out to bid or hold a public vote before giving the entire town to one agency. How did the Town Board feel that giving the west side of town to an organization that already had big financial problems on the east side of town was going to be a huge success going forward? This decision was made after the Webster Town Board undercut the West Webster Fire Commissioners in taking control of the CON on the west side of town and giving it to Weems. What in the world was your thinking process in this major decision for Webster residents and their health care? Are you just listening to the CEO of Weems without doing any other research on their financial CPA audited statements? Have you looked at the last 3 years of their tax returns where they have made money, not lost money? Even in the Union Hill days, they operated the ambulance service without Webster taxpayer dollars and on a third-party billing system before Nichols stated they could do a better job. Why is Nichols the only organization in Windham County who has not joined their ALS and VLS service into one organization and stopped with the double billing? Are the town board members not concerned about billing of its residents? In the current contract signed in December 2020 by Supervisor Flaherty, there are no ambulance rates shown for what the charges are for an ambulance ride by Weems in the town of Webster. There are no performance metrics in this contract, no expectation, no checks and balances, and no repercussions for missed benchmarks. Whoever wrote such a pathetic contract and the town board who passed it should be embarrassed. Can any of the town board members tell us tonight how much an ambulance or ALS ride is in the town of Webster? Don't you think the 46,000 people in this town have a right to know if they call an ambulance tonight what it's going to cost them? They should have that right. Why hasn't the Webster Town Board demanded the Equals provide documentation of the combined 38 universal Department of Health metrics that are required to provide good care to the Webster residents and report these findings to the Webster community? Why doesn't this town board insist that an ambulance be set on both the east and west sides of the town to ensure a safe and speedy ambulance response time to our Webster residents? What happened to the big plans that Nichols was going to park an ambulance at the Gravel Road Fire Station? That all blew up after this town board enforced their CON powers over the West Webster commissioners. Who are the losers here? None other than the Webster residents on the west side of town. In closing, I'd like to say that I'm very knowledgeable about the ambulance controversy in Webster since I've been involved since day one. The CEO of Nichols has made statements and promises over the years that he hasn't kept, and he has made statements that have clouded his character. If you don't believe me, just go ask one of the female employees at the town hall that he got crying one day because he couldn't get what he wanted. Now he is leading the Webster community down a deep rabbit hole because of his personal desire to form an ambulance district. The town board needs to do a lot more research, looking at other viable alternatives for the Webster community before taxing its residents, which is not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, does anybody else want to, well, there you go.
I don't have a big long pipe out thing like that.
And actually, you're not dressed as nice as Mr. Nesbitt, but that's okay.
Neither are you, but that's okay.
No, I'm not. I mean, he brought it.
So,
We could learn from him.
I didn't know there was a dress code.
Let her rip, Ken.
So it's Ken, but thanks, Tom.
Welcome.
Well, inflation is at a 40-year high. I don't have to remind you of that, right? If the numbers are even accurate, you're going to charge additional tax for an ambulance district, which concerns me for my mom, who's 87 years old and on a very fixed income, and I have to help her manage her money. About a year and a half ago, she moved in with me, and it's hard for a woman with a fixed income, a very low fixed income, by the way, to make ends meet. So some of the questions I have, and I know I'm not going to get an answer, but some things to think about before you're voting on whether or not you're going to have an ambulance district. There's 16,000 properties in this town, roughly thereabouts. Some of them include nursing homes and assisted living centers. And I would think those would be at a higher percentage for calls, but they're going to be taxed at the same rate. There's also a number of ambulance companies around us that are volunteer, and if they have a taxing district, it's because they're volunteer. They're not paid employees. So you're going to tax the people of a district for a service that is normally a volunteer service. And as Mr. Nesbitt mentioned, $850,000 was disclosed in their PPP, and they had a balance of $342,000 at the end of 2020. My question is, were any of those numbers provided to you when you decided to give them $200,000 and some odd in a grant? I myself applied for a number of grants, PPP, as well as a couple of grants from Monroe County. I had to provide financial disclosures for quite some time, a year or more, depending on what the grant was. And the amount of money that I received from the grant was dependent upon a lot of things, including, what the income is and how much money you might have lost, etc. So I would think that the town board, I would hope that the town board took the same care in making that grant money used appropriately. There's a lot of other things that are going on in the town. You got the Sandbar Park, you got the highway department's going to need a building, you got $31 million for the sewer district, and honestly I can't remember them all. But they're all hitting at a 40-year high in inflation. I don't see this town board looking at how they can reduce expenses. I see how we're spending money, my money, your money, and 40-some thousand residents' money. And that's hard, especially, again, if I do take it back to my mom, who has a fixed income. As you know, I fight the school tax every year, but that's sort of a lost cause. As you probably also know, I was in a video from the Webster Republican Committee talking about low taxes, and I actually now am embarrassed to actually have said that, because I don't think any of you on this board really understand what that means to try to keep taxes low. There's no way in the world you're going to be able to stay under the cap this year at the rate you're going. So, again, just remember my mom, she's 87, she's on a fixed income. She's not going to come in here, she can hardly even walk, and tell you this, so I'm here to tell you that. And there's a lot of other 87-year-old Italian grandmothers and grandfathers and people in town that are on fixed incomes and want you to be very judicious with their money. And I ask for that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Well, like I said, it is my favorite part, having the people come and give the 5 minutes at the podium, because it's the only way that we do get to hear, really firsthand, how people in the community are thinking. With all due respect, I will say, as far as the ambulance goes, it's a bit of a quintessential putting the cart before the horse. I have not seen what Ahmed is presenting next Thursday night, so I don't even know how to comment. I don't know what he's presenting next Thursday night. He asked to present. We said, of course, a workshop is where you present that. Things get presented to the town board. I don't even know how to comment on what we would be voting on. That it's a bit of a cart before the horse, and I guess that's all I have to say to that.
Can I make one final statement?
No, actually, we're
Okay.
all done with that.
I'll put it
So
on mine.
next is, we have the July 7th board minutes for approval. I've read them. They look fine. Thank you, Dolly. They were accurate to what was said. I make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
James, is this you?
Yes, sir.
All righty.
Okay, I looked over the bills, they all seem to be good. I make a motion to pay the bills.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And I have reviewed the prepaid warrants as submitted by Paul Adams, our Director of Finance, and I make a motion that we approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Josh, you want to give a little color to this next one?
Sure. So this next agenda item pertains to our efforts to secure a grant through the state's consolidated funding application process for 2022. This is a grant that we pursued last year unsuccessfully, but if you recall at the workshop we had back in May, the town board indicated its support for moving forward with the comprehensive plan update. So we're pursuing the grant funding again this year. I will say that last year was the first year that this program was made available. This time around they have doubled the amount of funding available, and they've also doubled the maximum amount awarded to each recipient. So we're definitely going to aggressively pursue this, and what tonight's agenda item essentially does is reflect the town board's support of pursuing the grant.
And is it due by July 29th, CFA?
Yes, 1 week from tomorrow.
It seems like July 29th is a due date for a lot of this stuff, not just CFA. And this is kind of one of those things where there might be like 27 different things that need to be submitted to put ourselves in the best position to get awarded the grant. And one of them is the state wants to see that the town board is acknowledging and authorizing and in favor of us applying for this grant.
Exactly.
Okay?
And I would also add that we have letters of support both from Senator Van Helming and Assemblyperson Jennifer Lunsford, who have submitted their letters of support for this as well.
Mayor Byerton Village also did.
Wonderful.
And I think the county did, right?
Monroe County Planning and Development, as well as WEDA.
And I think I've asked two legislators, Mark Johns and George Hebert, that represent Webster, to also do a letter of support. Okay. Any questions? No comments on this? Well, in that case, make a motion authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Smart Growth Community Planning and Zoning Program, SGCP, for the purpose of updating the town's 2008 comprehensive plan.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Catali?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill? Councilwoman Wood?
Aye.
Well, Arthur,
Yes.
how are you?
Doing great, how are you?
Good. Usually, our PowerPoint presentations are kind of relegated to the workshops, but in light of the next two resolutions that are at least on the agenda, I thought it was important that Art Patrone, our Deputy DPW Commissioner and Sewer Plant Director, somewhat present and do a little Q&A with the board before we venture into these resolutions. So, Art, I'll hand you the baton.
Very good, thank you. So we're going to discuss rate project MO65. This MO65 is actually split with the village, two separate projects, but under the same rate project number. Our portion of rate project MO65 is the outlet pump station resiliency and improvement project. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We had an original engineer estimate on 112. As you can see, this was bid with one, the engineer's estimate was one contract. The construction subtotal would have been $234,600. And if we slide down a little bit, we can see mobilization fees that were estimated, contingency fees, engineering, planning, permitting, and construction administration fees, with an estimated probable cost in January of $405,020 with a grant. And I'm not sure why the last line is not coming up.
Huh.
Yeah, we had a problem with this earlier and it was resolved. If you want to bear with me,
Well, I know this.
because I can pull
Well,
it
you-
out of my drive.
The board has printouts of this, so they have that bottom line. What the TV audience is seeing, I'm not sure. Certainly what have we uploaded to the website and social media.
We can do it this way, Supervisor.
Did you get it?
Well, I can do it this way out of presentation mode, if that is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so sorry about that. We've gone through this numerous times today and had it resolved. So the portion of the ready grant, that was a $501,000 grant. The town's portion is $320,640. The estimated net cost of the town in January was $84,380. We went to bid, we opened bids on May of 24th of 2020. You can see the bids were definitely higher than the original estimate. Construction subtotal was at $605,000 compared to $234,000. Mobilization is included in the bid. Engineering planning held the same. So the estimated probable cost from the first bid opening was $832,320, less the ready grant contribution, and that cost to the town after the first bid was $511,680. As the construction subtotal was over $500,000, and it was bid at one contract, it came into conflict with Wick's Law, which anything over $500,000 needs to be split into two. We rebid on July 13th. Into two contracts. Contract 1A is construction, contract 1B is electrical. We had two bidders for each. The low bid for construction was $498,500. The low bid for electrical was $121,650. The total was $620,150. We reduced the contingency to 10%, to $65,900. You can see the engineering cost went up. That did include cost of the rebid documentation, and also includes construction observation. Keeping in mind that construction observation is a time and material, So if that is a not to exceed, we can control that and reduce that as much as possible. I do not see us maximizing that portion of that contract. The cost after the bid was $844.70, less the ready grant contribution of $320,640. The net cost to the town is $523,430. So it's obviously a large increase from January's original estimate to where we stand today. And the next slide will show why that is. I'm going to put this back in the presentation. There we go. So we've been working at different projects, and I've asked some of our partners to create a commodities list and where we are in commodities. And we've had one from October 2020 to March 2022. You see 15 items which are very prevalent in most, if not all, construction projects, from rebar to concrete to asphalt to gasoline, stainless steel, rubber, and so forth. And the bottom line is shipping. One container increased shipping from $2,200 to $22,000. I did not include that in the percentage increase. The overall increase from October 20 to March 2022 is 90.43%. And that is the market and economy that we live in today.
Can you go to the next slide, which is there? Well, that's an easy one. Construction anticipated to be completed in 2022, which means we have 5 months left in 2022. I don't want to steal your thunder, Art, before we go to Q&A or discussion with the board on this. The MO 65 is part of the Ready Grants. We have been catching up on the Ready Grants with the state. Obviously, we're really doing well this summer on the time schedule of all the other MO grants, which have to do with the Lake Road and Sandra Park. It makes sense to me that we would get this done by the end of 2022. But what you just presented, and I think what you were trying to present, is the realities of bidding in 2022 with inflation and all that. Just gave the sobering reality of what that is going to cost.
You're absolutely right, and I use the word construction anticipated to be completed in 2022 because of the long lead times in supply chain. We're not really sure at this point, but construction ideally would start, and obviously prices would be locked in as best we can.
So do these bids, did they come in with escalators in them?
You can, there's no escalation, they're hard bids. If there's anything.
So we don't, so if duties, they can't get the material for 6 months, that price is locked in, is what you're saying?
That is we do have some contingency in there to account for that.
No, not contingency. Would the verbiage in the contract state that they cannot escalate their prices beyond what they have bid? I know I understand what contingency is.
And I understand you understand that, but this is the reality we live in. No, there's not verbiage in there. That's why we need to, if the town chooses to move forward, we need to lock it in now. So once a PO is cut from a contractor to a vendor, it is the contractor's obligation that they will hold that price. But
We-
there is, and I'm sorry to
I'm sorry,
interrupt,
go ahead.
but there is force majeure that has been played into many contracts within the construction world lately. So,
Force majeure?
force majeure, Charlie, do you want to explain that?
No, I don't understand what it means, it's not lead. No, basically, things that happen out of your control.
So, there are some construction companies out there that are not allowed to increase their prices. What they submit is a bid, that's locked in for the term of the contract. So, I just wanted to put it out there that is currently going on in the construction business. All right. So, that's the reason the impetus to ask that question.
Yep.
So, this specific contracts, they don't have that.
That's right.
As an industry, it is possible to put that in, that verbiage in there. And I'm looking at these incredible increases from 84,380 in January 22 to now we're at 523,430. And if the project doesn't start for a few months or it's not anticipated to get done, by the end of 22, what's going to happen to that 523? Does that go to 700,000? We have no control over that because the verbiage is not in the contract, and that really concerns me. I've never seen anything like this.
I can't disagree with you.
Pardon?
I don't disagree with you.
I'm just looking for options. What are our options here?
Well, I don't want to convolute this. MO 65, the ready grant is it 540,000, Eric?
501.
Oh, that's right, because of the way the state did it. New York State did it in 2019, 2020, and O'Brien Gear, the engineering firm, the state retained to somewhat look at what needed to be done and said, well, here's the grant dollar amount, and they were trying to basically back into what would be a municipality having 5% skin in the game, okay? The scope of work under MO 65 has things that are town of Webster government related and things that are the village of Webster government related. So the intermunicipal agreement, Charlie, that you and myself and Mayor Byerts and Don White, the village attorney, worked out a couple of years ago, was commensurate with the fact that the town was getting $320,000 of this grant, and that's shown on your sheet up there, Art. And the village was getting, I think, around 180, something like that. And the village, from what I've been told, is running into the same situation that we are. That their skin in the game is significantly more than what they anticipated. And I've been told that they went and accepted their bids at their workshop on June 28th. Unfortunately, I have not seen that workshop. The minutes aren't available, so I don't know what they did. And that's why, Charlie, you and I, whatever happens tonight on these resolutions, let me put it this way, assuming that the town board ratifies or approves these resolutions to accept these bids and we move forward, where we're at then is we got a grant that we're the lead agency in an IMA with the village. And I'm not certain, how does that work, Charlie? Are we our brother's keeper? I mean, I don't want to...
No, I think, my interpretation of lead agency applies to seeker, basically. It's not, it doesn't mean we're guarantors of payments. It's my interpretation.
Well, Paul Adams is not here tonight, but the way I understand it also from a financial end is that, we're dishing out the money in a lot of ways. Because we're in an IMA on MO 78 with the county. on the break wall. And then the way the state reimburses us for it on this grant, I pay particular attention to. And I just, you know, I don't want, I said I didn't want to convolute this, but it's tough enough to sit here as the town board, looking at these sobering numbers, and also there's two decisions. One, to accept these bids and move forward. The second one is, where does this $500,000 come from? Is it bonded? Is it from the sewer reserve? Where does it come from? And, you know, thankfully, because of very good fiscal management in this town for years, and I've said on this thing for years, even before I was the supervisor, we're in a position where at least we can pay for that access. And that's why I'm very interested. I'm interested to see what the village is doing, because if the village, on their portion, I don't know how it works if all of a sudden something goes a little sideways there, as far as how this grant is distributed out to the town. When we're the lead agency, it's a $500,000 grant, but 320 is the towns and 180 is the village. How's that for convoluting it? Because from what I've heard, the village thought they'd have skin in the game originally of about 10,000. We thought we'd have about 25,000. It's a $500,000 grant. 5% was what the state was estimating was our skin in the game. As time went on, you can see that that number grew, and I think ours now is being shown as skin in the game of 523,000. And I think that the village is about 200,000 skin in the game, based on the bid that they accepted allegedly on June 28th.
Right.
Does anybody know, and you said you weren't at the meeting. You doing video, you weren't at the meeting last week.
No.
I guess I'd like to know how they handled that. Did they also handle the fact that, yes, we are funding this and we're funding it through X? Because the village has different financial buckets to fund things than the town has. I'll just leave it at that. So there's my convolution, is that even if we move forward on these two, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And Charlie, I think you and I will be saddling up to talk to.
You said this is, right, you didn't say it, I'm saying, you said these are separate. I mean, we may be lead agency, but the village's project is separate, correct?
It's
I mean, physically separate.
physically separate, but falls under the same pretty
For the
project.
purpose of applying for the grant, it's one project.
Correct.
But in reality, in terms of the physical construction work, it's two separate.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that's going to be our saving grace, because if we deal with the state, I just, if we move forward and we get the work done to protect our asset, I want to make sure I understand what is our relationship with the village on this as far as they're moving forward, and if they hit any hurdles. And one of the big hurdles in this, you can accept the contract, but it's the funding of it, right? You were the village mayor, would that affect accepting a contract?
What's that?
The funding, what the funding source is?
Well, yeah, and it would depend on the cost of the overall project. I don't know, and quite frankly, what the village is doing is irrelevant to me with respect to the decision that we need to make. The decision we need to make is, are we going to agree to move forward with this amount of money with no protection to the taxpayers with respect to the next 6 months? I can guarantee you this price is going to go much higher. And there's nothing in the contract, with the exception of contingencies, that protects the taxpayers. You can see what the price has gone in 1 year.
And I'd like to.
And in 6 months, it's going to be even
Councilman
higher.
Cato, so you've asked me that question, and as the department head in charge of this project, it's incumbent upon me to get you an answer. No contracts have been signed, and so I'll work with Charlie Genesi and see if we can sort of narrow that down.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't mean to be redundant. but there are contracts in the
Mm-hmm.
construction industry right now, we've signed a number of them, where the job is not gonna start for 8 months. We're talking 4 million square feet of board we had to lock in. We were not allowed escalators, and that's happened on a number of projects. So I know that is possible to put that verbiage in there. It's just alarming to see the number one. And number two, very, very concerning that I don't know that we have the option of writing a contract, not allowing escalation in their prices.
In my interpretation of construction while I was in it, John,
Yeah,
if it's not in there when it's bid,
right.
that's what you get. You have to make sure the verbiage is in there when you bid it, so that the contractors that are bidding on it know that no escalator is allowed.
Because
That's what, the verbiage has to be in the contract.
It has to be in the contract they're bidding.
Correct.
It wasn't.
but I would imagine that would also affect whether they would bid on it or not.
I can guarantee you that if the verbiage is not in the contract, that no escalation is allowed, they will put RFCs in it to address the costs of the materials.
I'm sure they will.
And that's why I'm bringing this up. That's my concern.
The only way you could
It's a great concern.
the only way to solve that, John, was rebid the whole thing with that escalator in there.
Right.
And then you might see numbers that are way out of line, we couldn't afford to do.
Well, you might and you might not, though.
Right. You don't know without going on.
All I know is we've been numerous projects, and we had to be competitive, and there was no escalation allowed. So I know that practice is being done in the construction industry.
Well, I noticed there's a huge jump, obviously, in materials, it's the
Yes,
biggest increase.
Correct.
Between the last 6 months.
right.
Is it possible that the material cost would be going down?
I doubt that, not for 2 years.
So at light, it's going to be a long time.
Correct.
Is there, the way this resolution is written, is there something, verbiage I could add to the end of this resolution, to both these? It's the same verbiage for each of these resolutions, it's just the 2 different contracts, that would cover your concern, Jen?
I don't believe so, because the bid itself is not addressing that. There's no verbiage in the bid that identifies there is no escalation in prices allowed. Unless, Art, you can contradict, correct me.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so, no, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, but in my
No,
opinion.
I would caution against adding something that goes above and beyond the contract, because then it's approving something that
They didn't do.
we have to agree on. So-
Right.
Well, I mean, it says here supervisor executes said contract, and it's a $498,500 to CP board. Charlie, I'm not gonna, I mean, you tell me if everything looks good on contracts before I sign from a legal perspective. Wouldn't we just make sure the contract is pretty airtight on that? Or are you saying because it was not RFP bid that way?
Correct.
I would, what's the timeline on this?
We've got a couple weeks.
My suggestion is let's take a look at the contract before. The board's discussed this, why don't we just table the approvals of these 2? That'd be my suggestion. So we have a chance to look at the contracts. Okay?
I think it's smart.
Let's do
Well,
it.
I'd like to hear from the rest of the board members. If they're not in agreement, then we should, just go ahead.
I have no problem tabling it for review of the contract, but I'm sure that the contract is written the way most of them are written. There was no escalator clause in it.
I would agree, and I think that if that no escalation clause is written into the contract, we're going to see very different numbers when they come back to rebid it, because obviously they're going to protect themselves as best as possible. And then we have to consider the cost, the increased cost of rebidding once again. I have no problem with tabling it so that we can look at that and feel more comfortable with it. But my other concern is that the longer we delay this, obviously we've seen that the costs continue to rise. So, but I'm okay with tabling it. It's okay.
Yeah,
As long
and
as we look at it in a couple weeks.
I just want to make sure, the devil's in the details here, so I have heard that the reason why the village did their acceptance at the June 28th workshop was because they were running into an expiration date on the bid. Is that correct, Eric?
That's correct.
Okay. What's the expiration date on these bids?
Supervisor, I have to verify that. It's usually 2 weeks. It's usually about, it's going to be about 2 weeks from here, but I can verify that.
Okay. Because here's the thing, I know for a fact that the next regular town board meeting, Thursday, August 4th, in this room, Patty, you're not here, and Bill, you're not here. So that puts us in a precarious position on this is a meat and potatoes issue. 99% of the resolutions that we vote on are kind of low-hanging fruit. This is not.
Well, then we should vote on it tonight.
Well, I mean.
Right, they're not gonna be here.
There's a workshop next week, okay, I'm not saying that to say, to try to force doing this tonight. I understand the tabling aspect, I really do. I just want people to be realistic to the expiration date, which we don't know the expiration date of these bids, and the fact that if we slot this into the next regular board meeting, we only have 3 board members here.
I think we should, I know that we don't like to do things at workshops with resolutions of spending money, especially to this degree.
Mm-hmm.
However, we have discussed this quite robustly at this meeting, so that if we were to continue this discussion at our next meeting next week at a workshop, I'm comfortable with looking at this next week, especially since we're all going to be here.
I would like to see a copy of the verbiage of the contracts also, if that's possible.
Well, between now and next Thursday, we should be able to do that. So I would make a motion that we table resolution number 3 of awarding the Ready Project MO65 Contract 1A to the July 28th workshop meeting.
Second.
Councilwoman Cosarelli?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cato? Councilwoman Wynn? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
I would also move that we table resolution number 4 for the contract of number 1B, electrical construction, to the July 28th workshop meeting.
Second.
Councilwoman Cosarelli?
Aye.
Councilman Cato?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
And just as a reminder, as long as we're on this, what time does that workshop begin next Thursday? Because we do have a budget presentation.
4.
So it's at 4:30.
Yeah.
But when does the actual workshop?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Because
Oh,
the budget goes until 6, right?
yeah, if you want, the presentation, there's only one workshop item that night besides the 4:30 to 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Budget is the Neat Walls presentation.
Right, I just want to let people know that we'll be at 6 o'clock next week.
Yes.
Our budget presentations.
And that's good, because obviously the minutes here will show this was a pretty robust conversation, and a good conversation, with great points on all ends. I mean, and it'll be good if Paul Adams, our finance director, is here next week, to also, maybe opine on the pros and cons of, if we move forward, where should we get the funding from? Is it the reserve, is it the, I have feelings on that, but I'd also like to hear what Paul has to say.
I'd also like to hear an option of what if we don't go ahead with that? Okay, what position is that place?
Well, John, I will tell you this, is that, and Josh, I'm glad you're here, is the state and the Ready Commission leadership has been, I think, very good to us in the last year and a half, as they've navigated us through the Ready grants. And I'm trying to say this the right way. Most of the Ready projects are done in other municipalities. Do you follow what I'm saying? They have a $500,000 grant out there. So if we don't go through with it, do we give them the money back? that what you're saying?
I'm just asking, what are the ramifications if we don't go forward with this aspect?
Well, this aspect is the whole ready grant
I,
on MO65. If you're asking the ramifications of what happens to that pump station and that risk, or is it the risk of New York State and the funding we get from them as a municipality? What does it mean if we all of a sudden say, yeah, we were just kind of kidding about that $500,000?
I don't think you say you were kidding. I'm
Well, I
thinking
was
you
just
say we can't
speaking
really afford it, taxpayers can't afford it.
Right.
And that, you know, that, obviously, that information will come from Paul.
I was just gonna say,
Yes,
first.
absolutely. I've never seen an increase like this in my life ever, and I take it, nobody on this board has seen it either. So it definitely warrants, you know, looking into, in my opinion.
I would agree with you more. And it starts with the fact that we tabled it tonight,
Yeah.
which was, I think, the right move. All right, well, the next two we have had at these town board meetings and workshops 3 or 4 times. I don't know if Art, you want to talk about it, or if Charlie, you want to talk about it.
Why don't I just leave Art to add anything he wants, because it's really, Art's really done all, Art and Denise have really done all the, I'll say, the work on it, but we have 2 sewer extensions that the town board approved last year, Melinda Lane and Woodard Road. They're small, relatively speaking. I think one's maybe 4 or 5, the other's about 10 properties. Normally, it's not a big deal. We do not have to seek approval of the controller. However, because of a number of factors, for these 2 for approval, we have to apply to the controller for permission to go forward on these districts. The districts are not costing the town out of pocket any money. However, the amounts of money that it's going to cost the persons who are going to be benefiting from the sewers exceeds the, excuse me for editorializing, the artificially created threshold set by the controller, which for some reason is not taken into account inflation or all the other problems that the economy's had in the last couple of years. Anyway, bottom line is, we have set forth the amounts of money, we publish the amounts of money both per household and what it's going to cost total. So that's all out in the public. But we have to put together packages, which I think we've got here for each of these that go to the controller. The supervisor and I have to sign off on them. The supervisor signs a letter and I sign basically a certification type letter. And we have to submit it to the controller to get permission to go forward. And that's it. I don't know if you want to add anything, Art.
I really don't. This application, it's been a work in progress. It's honestly disheartening that the residents who are in dire need of gravity sewers in this town have to go through this and wait through this process. But I will say, you know, Charlie, you've been great, and all the department heads have been great getting us information and helping us out with this. So I think we're on the final step that we can submit this and hopefully get it approved within sometime in the next 10 to 22 weeks if we can.
Right. If the town board approves it, this will be going out, we're looking at Monday, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. The whole package will go out Monday, and we hope for a quick turnaround. We'll maybe keep on and see if it's even going to be quicker than 22 weeks. But they give us.
Any questions, comments?
No, I just want to say that as the liaison to the sewer department, I've been actively involved in this whole process, and everyone has really done a yeoman's job of putting this together. It required a lot of coordination. And I actually feel like we need to apologize to these residents because this has been in the works for so long. And as Art said, these people are in dire need of gravity-fed sewers, and they're having issues doing their laundry and having more than 2 people as guests at their homes. And it's embarrassing from a town board perspective that we have to go through all of this and that we can't get it done faster, but we seem to be sort of hamstrung by the state on this. So because we already established these sewer districts, I'm not going to read the entire resolution, and it is something that we're authorizing the town supervisor and town attorney to do, so I will make the resolution to authorize the town supervisor and town attorney to submit a Title II NYCRR Part 85 application to the state comptroller for the Linda Lane sanitary sewer extension.
Second.
Councilwoman Contaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
And then I would also make a resolution that to authorize the town supervisor and town attorney to submit a Title II NYCRR Part 85 application to the state comptroller for the Woodard Road sanitary sewer extension.
Second.
Councilwoman Contaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Okay, can you stay on a roll for the next one?
I sure can. So this is an intermunicipal agreement with Webster Central School District for 2 school resource officers. This is something that's been an agreement for the past several years, and our 2 officers, I think, really do a great job in our schools in providing wonderful service for our students. This goes through the school year. When school is not in session, these officers are brought back to do road patrols. So we benefit from having them do some road and traffic patrols during the summer. I would authorize the supervisor to sign an intermunicipal agreement with Webster Central School District for 2 school resource officers for the 2022-2023 school year.
Councilwoman Contaldi?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And Dolly, you probably give the most color on the next one.
Yeah, this is an annual event, in fact, what we call housekeeping item, has to be done every year. I'm asking the board to appoint Deborah Demink as the school task collector for the 22-23 school year. It's for properties in the town of Webster that are located within your school district, Wayne Central.
I imagine the people who've been on the board a long time, this is we've been through this a lot, so.
Yes.
Any questions, comments on this one?
No.
All right, I make a motion to appoint Deborah Demink as the school tax collector for 2022-23 school year for the portion of the properties in the town of Webster that are located in the Wayne Central School District.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Contaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Well, that concludes the formal agenda tonight. I'm making a motion in the New York State Public Officers Law, Section 105, to enter into executive session for discussion regarding proposed pending or current litigation.
That's 105(1)D.
That's 105(1)D, yes. And I guess I would put in that I want to invite to that session Josh Artuso and Dolly McGuire. That is my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Contaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill? Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
All right.
And we'll be concluding that we
Yes,
finish the executive session.
that is correct. So that'll end the televised portion of the board meeting tonight, and we will not be coming back